America's founders hit on something essential when they saw the connection between religion and liberty. Hi, I'm Stuart Shepard, and this is First Liberty Live. Thank you for liking and sharing our videos, for hitting that little thumbs up down underneath the screen. That helps us get more eyeballs on the work that we do and also introduces us to new friends. So thank you for that, and also for sharing this with your friends and family. Joining us today is John Wilsey. He is a professor of church history and philosophy and chair of the Department of Church History and Historical Theology at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, which is just getting over the big floods that they've had in recent weeks. He's also a senior fellow at First Liberty Center for Religion, Culture, and Democracy. Hi, John.
How you doing, Stuart?
I'm
It's good to
good.
be with you.
I'm looking forward to talking to you. You've got a new book coming out, and I really wanted to talk to you about it because the title is just bullseye for what we do here. It's called Religious Freedom, a Conservative Primer. Now, I work in the marketing department here at First Liberty, so whenever we have a new project, one of the first things we talk about is who's the audience? Who is this for? As you wrote this book, who were you picturing in your mind that you were intending this to be written to?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I'll say first who the audience is not. You know, when book proposals are written, you know, acquisitions editors love to get, you know, what the audience is going to be, and generally people in my line of work will say things like it'll be for you know, professors, it'll be for students, it'll be for interested lay people. I mean, I'm happy for those people to buy the book and read it, but the people that I really want to read it and the people that I really addressed it to are young people. People in Gen Z, the people that are in my daughter's generation, the people that are the students that I have and teach throughout the year. Young people, because young people have the most to gain from the tradition of the harmony between religion and liberty in America, and the most to lose if that tradition is lost.
Well, let's jump right in. Chapter 1, you've intriguingly titled The Permanent Beneath the Flux, F-L-U-X. Share where that phrase comes from and why it's important to establishing your premise for the book.
Yeah, that phrase comes from a writer, a historian, and a poet named Peter Viereck. Peter Viereck was a real important figure in the early days of the post-war conservative movement. And he wrote a couple of books on conservatism in the 1940s and 50s. And he defined conservatism by saying that conservatism was a fruitful nostalgia for the permanent beneath the flux. And he went on to say it was a fruitful obsession for unbroken historical continuity. And the permanent beneath the flux, that is, the permanent things, tradition, order, certainly religion, belief in the transcendent. These things were permanent things: truth, beauty, and goodness. And the permanent things serve as the foundation, the reference point, if you will, to the changes that come about from generation to generation. Changes, for example, that we see today in terms of technology, migration patterns, politics, you know, political and social issues, and those sorts of things. So it's tradition and religion and ordered liberty that serve as permanent things to guard us and guard our culture from careening off a cliff.
So even as culture is blasting all around us, changing every 15 minutes in this tech age that we live in, what you're saying is there are certain principles which are steadfast and true, and those provide a foundation for a solid culture. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's exactly right. So think about like a river, the channel of a river. The water is constantly flowing, but it's flowing on top of it's flowing on top of bedrock. So that bedrock is the principles that we receive: a constitutional order, federalism, religious freedom, freedom of speech, the First Amendment freedoms, the first freedoms. These are these are part of our tradition, and they're dearly held, and they've been uh, people have given their lives for them and defending them. And it's our job in the present to steward the tradition that we have and protect it and guard it and hand it down to those who are coming after us.
Now, that's Vierek's point of view in his quote. Now, I want to quote a guy named John Wilsey. He says, and I'm quoting, "Conservatism begins by asking the question, what kind of a person do I aspire to be?" And that really separates this from the idea of who I voted for in the last election. It's much more personal and much deeper than that.
Yes, absolutely. Ultimately, we aspire to be people of virtue. We aspire to be people who love liberty, but an ordered liberty. We want to have an ordered liberty in our culture, but before we can have an ordered liberty in our culture, we have to have self-command. We have to exercise restraint that is guided by virtue in our personal lives. And when we do that as individuals and in our families, then we can extend those virtues out into the broader sphere. So conservatism is pre-political. It does matter who we vote for, but who we vote for is downstream of what a conservative disposition calls for.
Now, as I look at this, the chapters in the book all talk about conservatism. It's the first word in each chapter of the book. But here we are. I mean, Stuart, we wanted to hear a conversation about religious freedom. You're talking about is conservatism. You make the key argument in the book that conservatism is the best defense, the best opportunity to defend religious freedom. Explain why that is.
Because religious freedom is a tradition in America. Going back to before there was a United States, there was religious freedom. And religious freedom was so dearly held by the Americans of the very first generation that founded the country, that they instilled it, that they encoded it, that they enshrined it in the very First Amendment to the Constitution. And of the 5 freedoms that are in the First Amendment, religious freedom is the first. And that's not by accident. Without religious freedom, there is no freedom of speech. There is no freedom of petition. There is no freedom of association. There is no freedom of the press without freedom of religion, and not just freedom of worship, some kind of watered down, weak-kneed, milk toast, Obama era reinterpretation of the First Amendment. Freedom of worship is vigorous and active. Freedom of religion is it entails free exercise and disestablishment. Now, you're right. I do spend a lot of time talking about conservatism, but the whole point of the book is that conservatives are in the best position to preserve, to conserve the tradition of the harmony between religion and freedom in America. That's a tradition that you and I received from our forebears, from our ancestors. And they gave it to us. They handed it down to us. It's our duty to hold it as a sacred trust and pass it down to our children and our grandchildren so that they can enjoy it as we have. Conservatives do that. Conservatives conserve. Progressives don't conserve. That's not their interest to conserve. But conservatives do. And so conservatives are in the best position to hand that down. So the question is, what is a conservative? And that's what I address in the chapters. Now, I also talk about religious freedom throughout the book. In every chapter that I talk about conservatism, religious freedom is also going to appear again and again and again until finally we get to the end of the book, and where I give a vision for what conservatives champion when they champion religious freedom.
And let's dig into that some more. Part of what you explain in the book is you say conservatives historically had a particular view of religious freedom, and now they have a different view of religious freedom. Describe for us what it was, what it is, and what we can learn from that change, the changes that we've seen in how people view it.
Well, conservatives in America, I'll say that conservatism, the American conservative tradition, dates back all the way back to John Adams and Edmund Burke. John Adams in America, Edmund Burke in England. And what's sort of central to conservatism is belief in the transcendent, a transcendent order. an order that is timeless. It's not going to be susceptible to the vagaries of changing culture and changing mores and changing technology and all that. Um, Belief in a transcendent order would start with God. So conservatives, even if you're not a Christian, you don't have to be a Christian to be a conservative. Conservatives value religion and always have in the American tradition. They've also always valued freedom. And so freedom and religion have always gone hand in hand. They've always been paired in the American tradition, going all the way back to prior to the founding, and certainly the national founding. Um, in the culture, Americans' views about the role of religion in culture have changed. But one thing that hasn't changed is conservatives' value that they place upon religion, and the belief that many conservatives, most conservatives, I would argue, have in the power of religion in society.
A foundation of our work here at First Liberty Institute is the understanding that the free exercise of religion is essential for a free society. You can't have one without the other. Explain why religion and liberty are so intricately interwoven in our society.
One reason, and this is what I sort of try to get at in the book, and I say that one reason for that is that both religion and freedom are features of our humanity. They go to the very center, the very heart of what we are as image bearers, as how God created us to be. So our awareness of God, which has to do with religion, and our freedom, which always entails responsibility, moral responsibility. Both of these are features of our having been created in God's image. We can't escape these things, whether we like them or not, whether we believe them or not, whether we acknowledge them or not. An awareness of God and an awareness of our own freedom and the responsibility that we have. These are key aspects of our humanity. Governments are instituted not to give us freedom of religion. Governments are instituted to guard the tradition of religious freedom. And conservatives, our responsibility and our principal value is to conserve that view and that vision of the person, the human person, and the purpose of government.
Something I often hear Kelly Shackelford, our president, say when he speaks to groups of people is that one reason that government tends to have this innate urge to clamp down on religion is because an oppressive government can't stand to have people who follow an authority higher than the government. And that really is integrated right in the middle of what you're saying here, that if the people are looking to a higher power, a higher direction for their lives and for purpose, government isn't the most important thing in their lives. It's not the end-all and be-all of their lifetimes. There's something bigger than that. And that's why, especially authoritarian governments, one of the first things they clamp down on is religious freedom and expression of religion.
That's right. That's right. Because if they can do that, they can truly have an unlimited power over the people. But if a government seeks to give a free, a sort of a wide berth to religion and society, then people know that they answer to a higher authority. But in the American tradition, the American governmental system, our system has always been in agreement with the principles of particularly of Judeo-Christianity, and not been at odds with those principles. It's only been recently, the last 50, 60 years, that there have been serious aberrations with regard to that, serious contradictions between government policy and the conscience of religious people.
We're living in a time that many call a post-Christian era in America. How do we still have an impact on our culture from our newly diminished, if you will, position in society, where we don't have the assumption that people have a basic understanding of Scripture and what God wants from us. We're kind of on the outside speaking back into the culture now. From our position here, how do we best make impact on America?
Well, that's a great question. That's why I wrote this book, because it's I think it's a situation where we have a task in front of us that's complicated. It's not complicated. It's just not easy.
Yeah.
Uh, it's hard to do, but it's simple. And I think that part of the answer is that we take seriously our role as conservers of civilization, conservers of tradition, a tradition of harmony between religion and liberty that's existed in America from the very beginning. I think that people in our culture often see religion and liberty as two different things that don't have anything in common, that don't have any kind of conversation, if you will, between the two of them. But following Alexis de Tocqueville, who wrote Democracy in America, I think that he's right when he says that religion and liberty are necessary to each other. You can't have freedom without religion. If you want to have a free society, you have to have religion. One of the reasons why that is because you can't have freedom without order. And religion provides a vision for order, because religion provides a vision for just authority, just law, justice in general. It provides a vision for virtue. It gives us a vision for who we are as human persons, created in God's image, as I mentioned before. Without these kinds of principles, you can't be free. One other thing that Tocqueville talks about is that religion gives people a vision that goes beyond just their own self-interest. And it gives people a vision for the life to come, the life that's after this life is over with. And so with those sort of eternal principles in mind, we can have a basis for order, which means that we can have a basis for liberty. But you can't have liberty without religion. You can't have religion. You can't have a truly free society. You really can only have libertinism, license, which leads then to anarchy and then to tyranny.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that if we hold religion and liberty together as being not the same thing, of course, but two values that we conservatives hold together in a complementary relationship, I think that's part of recovering and retrieving that tradition in America, especially for the benefit of the next generation.
And our system really doesn't work unless individually we each are self-regulating, that we know where our edges are, so that we're not trying to bulldoze everybody around us all the time. America, our whole system of government, our whole system of society doesn't work unless we as individuals are self-limiting, that we're thinking about what's good for the other person on the other side of the door, or the person whose car that I'm stealing out of a parking lot.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. In the conservative tradition, Americans have always seen the basic unit of society as being the family. And you learn self-command in the family. It's one of the first things you learn when you're a kid. I was the youngest in my family, and so I learned my place on the hierarchy from a very early age.
I know what that's like.
And yeah, you know what that's like. You learned it when you were a kid as well. That's why we don't believe that the individual is the basic unit of society. It's the family. We learn our place. We learn a hierarchy of our place. We learn a family hierarchy. We learn what it means to follow the rules in the family. We learn what our limits are, and as we grow and we take those things out into the public square, politics and economics and church life and the military or whatever it is we go into, we bring those lessons with us. And those become value systems that we want to inculcate in our children as well.
I know you said you wrote this book for younger people, but I think the ideas that you're exploring in this book are ones that all of us would benefit from hearing. Is there anything else you'd like to share about it before I let you go?
The stakes are really high. The stakes are very high. Um, you and I, Stuart, you and I are old men. We've been around a while, and if I may be so bold as to say, you and I probably have fewer days ahead of us than we have behind us.
Very likely, yeah.
And when it comes to conserving tradition, good American traditions like religious freedom, we do it not as much for our sakes anymore. We do it for our children and for our grandchildren.
Yeah.
We do it for their benefit. That's how high the stakes are. Do we want to inculcate virtue in our own lives? Yes. And do we want our children to enjoy the traditions that America has offered and given to us? The answer, of course, is yes. So the stakes are high, and that's why I wrote this book.
Well, the book is called Religious Freedom. You can find it at your favorite bookseller. I recommend that you buy one copy for yourself and another copy for a young person in your life, maybe two or three, and share that with them. They'll benefit from the experience. Thank you, John. Good to see you again.
Thank you, Stuart.
If you happen to be in your 20s to 40s, you'll want to get connected with our newest initiative here at First Liberty Institute. It's called the Future of Faith and Freedom. We call it F3 for short. You can learn more about that by going to firstliberty.org/F3, and you'll be able to connect with people in your age group to learn more about why religious freedom is so important to our society. And also, if you want to see America's religious heritage defended, we do encourage you to look for the big red Give button up at the top of the page. We're a nonprofit. All the clients that we represent in court all over America, none of them ever get a bill from us because it's something we provide to them for free because of the generous donations of people like you who care about this as much as we do. First Liberty is fighting for what matters most.